edition presented by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Taufer, and today I'm speaking with another new friend of mine, Carl Dillon. Hello, Carl.
Hey, Jed. Thanks for having me on.
How's it going? We're here at Apex in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, people should really feel badly for us. I'm staring out the window here at snow-covered trees. It's really awful. My wife's gonna be really mad when she hears this podcast and be like, I thought you were hard at work. Oops.
Beautiful sunny days too.
I
right?
know, 65 degrees with snow on the ground. It's really tough.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's uplifting, and inspiring. So, You are an uplifting and inspiring person too, which is why I wanted you to do this.
Well, then
segue.
My marketing branding has worked really well. That's all I've ever wanted, is to feel uplifting and helpful.
What you wanted to talk about order versus balance, and I'm intrigued right away on the use of the connector there versus not order and balance.
No.
Or order in balance, or order with balance. Order versus balance.
Yeah. I think the hard thing is, if we've grown up, so I grew up in South Africa, but I've lived in the States for a long time. And I think Western culture, we're obsessed with this idea of balance. But if you or me or, any of our friends listening right now were to stop and think about it and go, hey, who's one person you know that is constantly living in balance?
Nobody.
And right? That silence just stretches out and you're like, And in most other things, you think if you're a creative, like Jed and I are listening to this, you have heroes who have done things. You're like, I want to get better at lighting, or for me, I'm a musician. I want to get better at songwriting or live performance. There are other people that I can emulate and go, man, I really love the way this person does this thing that I really admire. But here we are as a culture chasing this idea of balance. And yet if we get really honest, like, there are very few, if none, of the people that we're looking around at going, oh, they've achieved and are living in a perpetual state of balance. Mm-hmm. And so for me, a few years ago, I stopped and started thinking, well, why are we constantly talking about work-life balance or all of the other, what's your balance like right now?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know that exists. I mean, it's not even a unicorn. It's a mist. It's somebody talked about, a purple colored fog, and we were all out chasing it. We've never seen it. Right. And if for some reason it appears for a second, the minute you touch it, it disappears like a vapor.
Yeah.
And so I've really come to believe that that balance is a myth, and what we're really supposed to be looking for is order. Because even in simple mathematical terms, if I look at, I've got a lovely wife, 2 kids, a job, some things I'd love to do with my life, passions and hobbies. And if I went, okay, balance means everybody gets a fair share. There's a pie, everybody gets a cut.
Sure.
My work at 40, 50, 60, for some of those of you who are listening who may be in unhealthy spaces, hint, hint, 80, 90 hours in this particular season of your life, balance is never achievable because there's only 168 hours. Right. And you can't go, wife gets 10, kids each get 10 for each of them, job gets 10, my personal hobby gets, that's not the way it works. And yet we still are obsessed with this idea. But I think it's much more interesting and helpful to consider what it looks like to pursue order. And
so what does that look like? What does pursuing it look like?
I think before you pursue something, you have to define it.
Good.
And I think order will look different for everybody. And one of the things that, I constantly am trying to reiterate with friends or anybody who's hearing this idea, maybe even for the first time, is as you listen to me, I would encourage you to hear it as descriptive, not prescriptive.
Okay.
So I am telling you how I'm experiencing order, but I'm encouraging you to go and define that in your space. And so for me, order, as a person who is kind of really been fortunate to find a healthy path in my spirituality, I look at order as being my creator, that in my particular experience is through the lens of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so I look at this as, okay, it's my relationship with God. And it's a relationship. It's not a duty or an obligation or a thing that I have to do. It is in either a dark night of the soul or in just a quiet place on a great day like today when I walk outside and find moments of solitude and silence. This relationship is primary. Because even if you think about the ways that we've shifted our language in the last 100 years, do you realize before the 20th century, priority was a singular word? Nobody had priorities. They had a priority. Like that is something we created.
Right?
Yeah, it is a linguistic adaptation of the 20th century. Because as we industrialized, we became busier and had more things to do, and we no longer had a singular priority. We had multiples. But we have been operating for, millennia before that to have a singular priority, and everything else was secondary.
Okay.
And so I think if you think about, there's amazing benefits of the 21st century. I think 99% of us around this conversation or listening right now wouldn't have a profession without the 20th and 21st century technology, right?
Sure.
But with every great tool comes also a great engine for possible destruction in our personal spaces.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about, okay, so as all of our responsibilities have multiplied and our abilities to create have multiplied, have we lost sense of a priority? And so for me, I have a singular priority: to be in relationship with the one who created me and ask a question: why? What does today look like, and why does it need to look that way?
So you start there.
I start there. That's number one. And my order is very simple. There's only 4 spaces. It goes God, Creator, Jesus, that's the one. And again, prescriptive, not prescriptive, descriptive for me. Right?
Descriptive.
So whatever that is for you. And again, anybody who's listening to this who wants to reach out and ask about those things, always love to talk about that space. But
for someone that doesn't share that belief, would you say it's fair to say that in your mind it's an objective piece?
Absolutely.
That's something outside of yourself.
For sure. Because just ask again a logical question. Am I in stasis, or am I constantly changing?
Right.
And as humans, we're constantly changing and adapting. And so it would be like me thinking about a glass of water. What's really helpful with a glass of water that I've got right now is there's a flat, stable surface for me to start with and put it there. And when I need it, I can go draw nutrients from it. But if the table's always moving, that's not helpful to me. Right. If somehow the glass is always shaping differently and isn't holding the amount of water I need, then that's a problem. Right. And so for us, we can't be this species that goes, I am the end all and be all of my own future, because there's no stasis, there's no stability. Right. So again, whether that's beauty or a muse or the larger context of the universe, whether or not you think there's a creator involved, the beauty of being a creative is you recognize there is largeness, there is infinity, there's something larger than you are. Right. So start there. Right?
Yeah, I like that.
Because my other thing, again, as a spiritual follower of Jesus, it was never about, hey, let me convince you that this is your thing and exactly what you need to do. Because I came to that order that Jesus was number one through a personal experience. Nobody translated it to me. Nobody taught me that. I had an encounter. Right. And my hope as a good friend and a good fellow human on this journey is that other people will have those encounters. I'm not here to convince, because nobody was ever convinced into believing that they should be in a relationship. I didn't convince Jed that he should be in a relationship with anybody. Right. He encountered them, was engaged and interested, and then leaned into that thing.
Yeah, okay.
And so my hope is that you encounter something larger than you that feels stable.
So that's number one. That's at the top of the list.
Yes.
And that's something you attempt to be intentional with on a daily basis or a regular basis.
Yeah, and I would say, those things, if you're in a Buddhist or is in an Islamic state or a follower of just basic breathing principles, those things should be hourly. Right. Where you're kind of setting aside and going, look, I fall out of order regularly because, again, I'm not in stasis. I'm constantly changing.
I like that.
And so this ability to just stop and breathe. You'll hear this from neurologists, one of which is my brother. He tells me all the time. He's like, one of the most beneficial things you can do is every 25 minutes, set a timer on your watch or clock or phone and take a moment to take 6 deep breaths. It resets the frontal cortex of your brain. And so even that moment, just to say, move, 25 minutes. Okay, stop. Breathe, reset. Now there's stasis, and now I can change in a direction from a place of stability, which is really helpful.
Interesting. So what's number 2?
So in my life, number 2 is my wife, Kathryn. Okay. Because for me, there are these beautiful vows that we entered into in marriage where I said, we're now one. Mm-hmm. And so in that oneness, my first space on this planet is to be considering, how am I number 2 to your number 1? And so this is, it's, or maybe how am I B to your A? Because now it might get confusing. You're like, I thought one was your spirituality, and now your wife's. No. So if it's easier to, you're right. If it's easier to think, now I've letterized it. So you've got an A and a B. I want to be secondary to her primacy in that space, because this is what I promised her. I said, look, whether you believe it's a contract or whether you believe it's a covenant, or, again, whatever language is helpful to you, hopefully when that person walked down the aisle to you or you walk down the aisle to them, what you said is, my goal is that for the rest of my life, you will always feel like you're getting more out of this than I am. Like I'm giving more than I'm getting. Because when you have two people who are operating that space, amazing.
Yeah.
Like just amazing.
That's ideal.
Right. Absolutely. That's the ideal. And if you can communicate this order to that person,
right,
then it opens them up in ways that you wouldn't imagine. Like, I was joking with Jed and some of our friends here that I put a ringtone on purpose on my phone that is kind of cheesy and dumb. It's this Mariah Carey, Always Be My Baby. But the reason I put it on there is because you can't not feel good when you hear it. Like, it's just amazing. I mean, it just is. And
you cannot feel good when you hear it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, maybe you feel crazy, but it's not for you.
Not prescriptive.
Exactly. My man, nailing. Exactly. And so for me, I hear it, and it already sets the stage that I'm excited to talk to this woman.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been in places of contention and strife and conflict. And I hear that song, and I'm like, okay, just pause until it gets 6 seconds, 7 seconds into the song. I'm like, okay.
And it pulls you out of that.
There's a reset. Yeah.
I like that.
And so for you, maybe yours is a Nickelback song, Jed. I don't know what your jam is.
Oh,
just kidding.
That was a good dig. That was a good dig. I deserve it.
Yeah.
I deserve it. I'll have to think of what it would be.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there is one.
But also the beauty of that is I hardly ever take my phone onto vibrate. Because what I've done, especially with people who are around me, my friends or the people that I work with, is when they hear that song, they know that they are not priority. That the priority has just rung in and they're about to be interrupted.
That's fantastic.
And I like setting the tone for that.
That's so great.
I like them understanding the hierarchy of my life, that I chose to be one with this woman, and that they're now a distant space in that order for me.
I like, so when I love picturing you in a meeting or something and your phone goes off and some people or most people or maybe everybody in the room knows, and instantly they're like, ooh, that's his number 2.
That's it.
He's got number 2 on the line.
That's it. Number 2's here. Carl talks about the order all the time, and so we get that. But this really beautiful thing happens, because I know somebody's listening right now and go, Carl, you don't understand. I have meetings with really important people,
right?
And we're trying to do really crushing, hard things with deadlines, and you don't get my life, and I get it. I don't. And so I'm here to tell you what it does though in those rooms, because I've sat in like really important meeting. And my wife has my calendar. We share an iCal, so she knows where I'm at. And she doesn't ring unless it's important if she knows I'm in a space. So she values the fact that I value her so much. So she holds that with great care and affection. Because I'm already communicating to her place of importance in my life. And so then she protects that. And so sometimes you have to be careful. Maybe you're not in a healthy space with that person.
Right.
Maybe you're not in a place to do that as readily yet. And maybe that's a goal. But what it will do to the other people in your life, they'll go, I wish somebody would do that for me.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would treat me like that. What would it look like what would I have to be vulnerable enough to do? So I'm, you can't see me on the podcast. I'm a fairly large human being. I'm, not a super serious guy, but I do some serious things. And it takes some vulnerability on my part to go, I don't have any ego when a really girly Mariah Carey song that makes me feel good plays.
That's so great.
In setting the tone for these other people as to what my priorities are.
Oh, that is enviable confidence, my friend. I love it. What's number 3?
So for me, we've got kids, and so I think in the same way that my wife walked down to the aisle and I said yes, my kids didn't have any choice in coming into the world and who they were assigned to. My wife and I picked that.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I decided that you're going to come into the world and that we're going to do this thing together. And the least I could do is be present to you when you didn't pick that. And so again, same thing. I've been in a meeting with people trying to do some things, and my kids run in everybody in that room knows, all right, this thing's shut down.
Number 3 is here.
That's it. Yeah. And we are 4, right?
Yeah. And they know they're 4.
They know they're 4.
Okay.
And so they know I hold them in high regard and I love them and I would do anything in the world for them.
4 is pretty good.
4 is pretty good in our new world of multiple priorities, right?
That's right. 4 is not too shabby.
Right,
Come on.
It's not too shabby. But in that space, I want... because the big thing we struggle with as humans, entrepreneurs, creatives, whoever we are listening to this thing, is a sense of identity. Because everybody has some sort of hurt in their history with identity. You were either pretty and that's all somebody saw. You were ugly and that's all somebody saw. You were talented and that's all somebody saw. Or you weren't talented.
Yeah.
You were part of this group or you weren't. And it doesn't matter whether you were inside or outside. It all comes with different identity pain. Because one of the things I talk with people all the time, you could not ask me and pay me enough money to be an attractive, well-rounded woman in the 21st century because you have to work so much harder in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And then also there's so much envy and jealousy from everybody else that they write you off and assume, well, they just got there on their looks or whatever.
Right.
So we think, oh, my hurt, my wound in terms of my identity is the only one and yours isn't real. We've got 7 billion people walking around with some sort of identity hurt because as humans, we're always creating a boundary of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one thing I can do as a dad to my kids right now is solidifying their identity. Look, in dad's order of things, I'm above everybody. Like there's one other breathing person on the planet who has more pull than I do. And I say that to their face. Like, look, mommy and daddy are going on a date. She's number 2. You're number 3.
Yeah.
I'll see you later on. So they see my value of her. And then in rooms and spaces with other people, they see their value in context of that.
Because at the same time, you're instilling in them that they're number 3. They're above everybody. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's getting me a little bit. I have to pull it together. And so everybody else is number 4, obviously.
Everybody else is number 4.
That's what's left.
Yeah. And I, when I share this with friends or colleagues or in different spaces, I'm very clear on that. I say, because it's very quick. Obviously, we've talked about this for a couple minutes now.
Right.
But the idea of this is quick. To me, it's, my creator, my wife, my kids, and then everybody else.
Right.
And everybody else is whoever I feel like is in front of me in that moment and has a need that I can lean into and carry and assist.
Yeah.
And so that now isn't also based on what you can do for me. It's based on what is the need? What can I do? What can I kind of come in, link arm to arm, shoulder to shoulder, and help carry for you or help celebrate? Because, one of the concepts we talked about briefly was this idea of with everybody we encounter, if we're going to be decent, wonderful human beings who are impactful in their life, we need to figure out how we carry pain and celebrate pleasure.
Oh, I like that piece too. Yep.
Yeah. And so I want all the 4s in my life, you and everybody else that I come into contact with, go I esteem your 4-ness. Yeah. And in your life, I want to lean in and, hey man, if I hear you kind of going, hey man, I need to share some stuff and it feels like a complaint. Okay, that's about a pain space. Right. So how do I grieve that? How do I help carry you some of the weight of that? Carry with you the weight of that right now? Or if you're going, Carl, oh my gosh, podcast amazing, I'm getting all this great feedback, man, tell me more about that. Yeah, it's really quality. I love what you're doing. How do we get more people to enjoy that? And how am I celebrating well with you and being present in the moment to go, well done. That is awesome. That's fantastic.
You have these great little pieces, the order versus balance, the carry pain and celebrate pleasure.
Yeah.
That to me are great little things that are easy to memorize. I love the concept of ordering things out and focusing on that rather than striving for a mist, right?
Yeah.
Or a myth.
Yeah.
It's a mist and a myth.
Absolutely.
It's
both.
It doesn't
100%
really exist.
Right. Yeah.
It certainly isn't tangible. And the other one that really sticks with me that you said the other day is the relationship of, I'll put it this way and then I'll hand it off to you, but the relationship between rest and work.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Can you dive into that a bit?
Sure. Yeah. So again, if you look at whether it's mythology, philosophy, or religion, almost all of these big things that have captivated human imagination have a fairly similar origin story. So we'll just take the Judeo-Christian one, for example. In that one, there's a benevolent being, God, and he creates the world. And at the end of creation, and think about it, this is a logical being, right? I mean, what I love is when, it doesn't matter if you're talking about Einstein or Hawking's or Neil Tyson deGrasse. They talk about if there is a being, the being is the first great scientist, and the language is mathematics.
Right.
And I love those ideas, right? So there's all this science. Those things are not mutually exclusive. They're actually mutually inclusive. They're required of each other. And so you think about, whether that's a 6-day idea, if that's, billions of years, whatever works in your context. There's this thing, create the world, light and darkness, the mountains, the rivers, all this beauty just comes into kind of existence, billions of years or instantaneously. And then from all of these, again, mythology, philosophy, religion, stories, then there's an origin space for humanity. And the Judeo-Christian, the logic, the mathematics of this goes, I create the world, and then I create humans, man and woman. And then the first thing in the Torah and the Bible is, and then they rested. And so if you think about the mathematics, the science, the logic of that, these creatures, our great ancestors, were breathed into being, kind of face to face with this creator. And then their first experience, the first, I'm using air quotes here, day, and again, time being non-specific, their first space of existence is then the seventh day, rest.
Which is rest.
Right. And so you think about it, they didn't wake up and then go, hey, what's the job? Like, what are we doing? And again, in the Bible, in the Torah, and God said, and he made creation, he saw it, and it was good. And on the seventh day, he rested and dwelled amongst his creation. And again, whether you're a follower of that, appreciator, non-appreciator, we all have different histories on that. I love the idea of that. I love the idea.
The first thing that the human beings did was rest.
And rest was about community, together, dwelling together with each other and with their creator.
Right.
And so this idea, if you look at modern culture, so I'm from South Africa, and we're trying to somehow catch the States in terms of our work pace. Everybody looks at the U.S. and go, look at all the things they're producing and the things they have. If we work harder and more, we can kind of catch up at the speed. You see, the Japanese are masters of it in the 21st century. They work really hard, these crazy long 70 and 80-hour national work weeks. And especially in the Western culture, what's common phrases we hear in the U.S. now? It's like, FML, it's Monday. Right? And you think about that concept. Monday's not a thing. Yeah. We've attached things to it, but it's the exact same thing that happened the other day. You were unconscious and you became conscious, but we've created a construct, and now we're like, well, we hate this particular day that I woke up. Which
I'm
is
sorry
insane.
for laughing. I've just haven't thought about it like that before.
But it's insane, right? I mean, we're laughing.
You can even have a case of the Mondays as if it's this
Garfield
disease.
has somehow set our national consciousness on the way I'm supposed to view my week.
Yeah,
like an orange cat from a comic strip has told me how to feel about my day. Like the insanity of that should be overwhelming. It should make us...
an orange cat that doesn't even exist.
Right. We should have nervous laughter that this is what we're passing on to future generations.
Maybe there is some nerves here.
Yeah. So, sorry about the cat thing. We didn't really examine it. It just kind of spiraled out of control. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. But then, we do the other part of that, the bookend to that is I'm working for the
weekend. The
weekend.
TGIF.
That's right. We've got this obsession with Friday and Saturday. And not only do we have an obsession with that, then we try and numb out really hard. Yeah. Man, I'm going to get blackout on Friday. Right? Because work is so hard that I need to escape from
to escape, right.
That's it.
Right.
And again, my particular kind of philosophy on this and what I'm seeing, we are also one of the first cultures to make a non-rest day the first day of our week. If you look at Jewish culture for, millennia, the Sabbath starts the week. It starts on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's that idea that we're resting first and then going into work. We're feasting. We're, enjoying each other in community. We're not, doing heavy labor. We're being together. And that sets the pace for the rest of what we're doing in this time construct we call a week. And so for us as human beings, if we look at that larger narrative, this possible story, whether it is analogy or not, it's this beautiful idea that said, I am not created, I am not designed to rest from work. I am designed to work from rest.
Oh, I love that. Like bells ring in my head when I hear that because I want it so much to be that way.
Yeah.
Now I think it is that way, but I've never really considered the concept until just recently, that we are actually made in a way and we function biologically in a way and neurologically, because I know you have a lot of stuff to back that up via your brother, that work should come from rest and not the other way around. And then to circle back to the creation story you were mentioning, that's exactly kind of what happened. On what they rested, and then there was a lot of work to be done.
Sure, and there's a very kind of beautiful distinction even in that creation story. So when things were right, in this garden, again, mythological, analogous, or real, however you're viewing that. The beauty is the idea. Yeah. They are in the garden, and then they start to tend that. There is work. Right. Because we are designed, we want to be productive. If you see in later years, the place, where we see large deterioration, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally and psychologically, is when people stop feeling needed or productive. You see this sometimes maybe in your grandparents or great-grandparents, where they want desperately to engage in conversation. And we, again, as a culture, have done this really terrible thing where we say, well, let me shove you into a home. You're no longer useful. We're not going to visit. And the insanity of that should also strike us. It's like, hold on, somebody with 80 years of life experience is somehow no longer valuable? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But we do this, and it should highlight for us the need to be needed and to be productive. It is hardwired into us. You see, even with children. So I've got a 2-year-old little girl, and she'll grab a baby doll and she wants to mother her. She's trying to be productive.
Oh my
and nobody ever taught her to do that.
Right.
I'd never sat her and, hey, babe, these are the 9 things you're going to do with your baby doll. They just start to do it.
It's so true.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Your sons will, and again, this is not gender specific. My son will play with a baby doll, and my daughter and son will both start building blocks.
Right.
They want to be creative. They want to be productive. And so even in the creation story that we're referencing, Adam and Eve, these 2 archetypes in the story, go out and they work in the garden.
Yeah.
And it's only later when there's a differentiation after things are broken and they have to leave perfection that then it said, and now you will sweat from your labor.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is painful.
Yeah.
Now this is, you have to do this for survival, not because it's a benefit of existence.
Interesting. Yep.
So there's a big difference between my work and my labor. Work should be fulfilling, and sometimes we're in a fallen world, and so sometimes you have to labor, and it's not fun.
Right.
It's just where we are.
Right.
But there is this sense of, can I even in that create order? Like, what was I designed to do? What was the innate work that makes me feel and come alive? And how do I translate that out of the things that I have to do, like my labor? And is there a way that I can start to swing the pendulum on that and do more of the work that I want to do and less of the labor that I have to do?
I like how that swings back around. I like how that connects.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's probably a completely different podcast.
Well, but there, yeah, you're correct. But I do like how that circles back, because having things in order when your work becomes laborious is probably key. Yeah. I'm just thinking of this now. This isn't.
Yeah.
But I'm making these connections right now.
And the beauty in that connection that your neurons are firing, creating a new pathway in that idea is that if we can let go of the balance idea, because right now your brain is already going, okay, how do I lock this into a balance context?
Yeah, you're right.
Because you're like, okay, some things I have to do for work, some things I want to do,
Right.
but it's a balance conversation,
Right.
and you're not going to find balance. It's how can I set the order? And the beauty of rest is we can rest in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then it will create work that is coming out of a place of rest. So it's even what we were talking about before, that little exercise where you take 25 minutes, you stop, you take 6 deep breaths. All of a sudden you have rested, and now you can work from rest. It's not saying, well, Carl, you don't understand. I've got 80 weddings this year, or I have to do this thing, or I've got a proposal that needs all this. Great. All of that is, I'm not asking you to devalue or shift any of that. I'm just saying it is beneficial when you can reestablish the order. And because you're not striving for balance, you can inject order anywhere and go, I can take 30 seconds to take 6 deep breaths. Right? Because if I can't, things are severely broken in my life.
You have other issues at that
You're
point.
also a liar. So you can stop lying to us and to yourself and all the other stuff. Because
that's the first issue. You're not telling the truth.
Yeah, and here's a brief little tangent on that, just talking about like cultural kind of sociology and shifts in the last 15 years. There were studies done in the late 90s and said, what is the most common response when you asked a friend or an acquaintance, how are you doing? And the most common response in the end of the 20th century was, I'm okay, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. The most common response in the 21st century in the last 15 years is, I'm busy. There's been this shift.
Interesting. I think that's so true.
We value this production. I'm busy. And again, we're playing this compare and contrast thing. Like, let me show you that I have value by illuminating you to the busyness of me. When if we're honest in those kind of dark, quiet places when nobody else is around, I'm like, if I was really efficient, how busy would I really be? Right? If I was resting appropriately and working really well and efficiently from a place of rest, how busy am I really?
So the proper response is, ooh, what are you doing wrong? Not, oh, you got it going on.
That's right.
It should be like, oh, what's wrong? What's happening?
Yeah, exactly. Can I help you with your efficiency? Because I think you're working really hard, but maybe we can fix some things and we can shift from labor into work, because you seem to be sweating a lot. I mean, hydration's probably an issue for you.
I laugh, and yet I think it's a legitimately serious issue. I think it's a big deal.
And I mean, we should laugh. I mean, laughter is great medicine. But Jed referenced my brother earlier. He's a functional neurologist, and any physician will tell you now the number one killer is stress. And stress is this internalized sense of your own busyness and somebody else's busyness being forced upon you. And so you have to react to it. And so if there are ways for us to decompress from that, and I mentioned a book yesterday I think everybody should read. It's called Essentialism. And in the book, there's this one great line where the author says, it is hard to overestimate the unimportance of virtually everything.
I want you to say that again, because I remember that and I love it. Yeah, say it again.
Yeah, so it's from the book Essentialism, and he says, it is virtually impossible to overestimate the unimportance of virtually everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so in that, again, this is, if you think about a stressor right now in your life, most of it is because we've overvalued the underimportant. And if we can get from a place where it's not an obsession with our own busyness, we can literally get physically healthier, emotionally healthier, more productive in our workspaces, all the things that we want. But sometimes, that's the beauty of podcasts like you guys are putting on that I love, is let me not work in the business, let me work on the business. And for most of us, we are the business.
Right.
And so if I can work on the way that I'm wired to think about this thing, I can improve, again, the order. My God, my marriage, my parenting, and then everything else.
I love it. I love it. I want to listen to this like 3 more times.
Yeah, you need to send it to me, because I mean, listen, everybody who's listening needs to understand. Carl is still getting this. This is every day. I'm never getting over it. I'm always going through it. And that's the beauty of humanity.
I like that too. See, there you go again. You have all these liners.
You see, I don't know if you were this way. So when I first came to the States, we went to, the Mecca, the beauty that is Dollywood. That's why you come to the U.S., right? Yeah, you go to Gatlinburg to see Dollywood.
Okay.
No, never mind that we'd heard about New York or, Disneyland, right? No, you're like, oh, you came all the way from South Africa and you went, oh, that's weird. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, for any of you listening from East Tennessee, I loved it. I'm just saying, we can all be honest. That may not be the first place your travel agent would send you from deepest, darkest Africa. But when we came here, I remember we rented like a station wagon. It was one of those ones where you could look out the back. And I remember one of the things that I loved was there's bumper stickers everywhere. And so I think the heartbeat of my communication is always, I'm too dumb to remember really big, long points. And so I need them very succinct. So I can go, oh, I need to work from rest, or oh, I need to go through it, not get over it. I think in kind of bumper sticker slogan spaces because I need that.
I think bumper sticker wisdom is where it's at.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? This was great. How can people find you? Where can people stalk you?
Nowhere. I'm completely off. No, I'm just kidding. So if you really want to see pictures of my kids, I guess you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and I have a music website, but these days I do kind of music halftime and then teaching halftime.
Is it just at Carl Dillon? It's
just at Carl Dillon. It's Carl with a C and Dillon like Bob, Dylan. But if you Google that, I'm annoyingly present online.
Okay.
But not really useful. If you like this is basically the only place you can get it. So you're welcome.
Thank you for your time. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Jed. I appreciate you having me on.
Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Cheers.